What's up with it, bro?
What's up? Chilling. Peace to the gods. Peace.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. How you feeling today? Let's say that first.
Yeah, feeling good, man. You know what I'm saying? Good energy. Definitely good energy.
Yeah. But for those who don't know who you are, introduce yourself, let them know.
Okay, I'm one half of the Trak Starz production duo out of St. Louis that's, known for Chingy. Success. That was our main success, but I did things, before the Trak Starz. But people would know us currently for the Trak Starz, which, produced Chingy, did the deal with DTP, with Shaka Zulu being our manager, you know what I'm saying? So, yeah.
Gotcha. Now you, like you said, kind of did things before, musically, before you, I guess gained the notoriety with, with Chingy and situation and everything. But before we get into all that, just get to know you a little bit more. What part of St. Louis did you come up in?
Well, basically, as a kid, we lived in the north side, like, over like in the Alcott area. Now that's when I was little, because I don't claim to be no super hood dude. Like, I grew up in the city, so when we were little, that's where we stayed when we was like super little. Like, but as we got older, we migrated out to North County, which would be like the Hazelwood area, because I went to Hazelwood Central High School. So from leaving from the north side when we were younger to there, that's pretty much where we moved to and settled. Pretty much for the rest of my life at that point.
Yeah. How would you describe St. Louis during that time when you was coming up?
You mean as far as like the music, right?
No,
or just period.
Just the city, like the city in general.
Well, to me, it was a lot of the same things you see now, but with no social media. You had gangs, you had fighting, stealing, robbing. Everything you see growing up in the inner city, you see today was back then. But the only difference to me is that it was more magnified. It's more magnified now, because of social media. But to me, it was the same, pretty much. I mean, it's the same thing. Of course, things have changed as far as codes of what we call the streets and certain disrespect. But to me, it was pretty much the same energy. Because we seen the same things that a lot of these kids are seeing today growing up.
Say history repeats itself. Right?
Repeats itself, absolutely.
The only thing, like you said, the difference is it's more in your face now, the social media, and you can, you can get in a whole rabbit hole about that. But
yeah, and then everybody reporting everything.
That's what I'm just
so
say, yeah.
When we grew up, you heard it was isolated incidents that you would hear about, but we didn't know about every single thing. Now, you got people that got pages, just dedicated to that. My cousin, Amina, like she's one of the owners of Real STL News. So now you have different outlets outside of the news that's capturing everything, that's magnifying the violence. But it's always been here.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, how was your household growing up? You have any siblings or anything like that?
Yeah, I got 2 brothers and 3 sisters. So I grew up in a just basic family, middle class. We wasn't poor, but we wasn't rich either. Like we was right on the cuffs of in between. So it was pretty cool. It was my dad who transitioned in 2017. Around that time or whatever. Like he was real influential in my career, like helping me buy equipment. He was a musician himself, and his brother was a jazz musician. That lived in California. He's still out there to this day. So I came from a musical background in my family, so he was always supportive of that.
Gotcha. Now, I heard you say that you started off in the city and you ended up moving out to Hazelwood, and I would assume that you went to Hazelwood Central High.
Yeah.
Did you graduate?
Nah.
Nah,
and I ain't one of them people that's ashamed, to talk about that. Like, I believe it was my sophomore year I dropped out.
Uh-huh.
I had it made up in my mind. I'm gonna do music. I don't want to go to school. And I think at that time, which my cousin KP, who I was in a group Out of Order with, I think we all pretty much dropped out around that same time. So, yeah.
Let's get into that. Like, I guess during that time, music was on the rise. So you felt comfortable. Like, this is gonna be my life. This is what I'm doing for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I just felt.
That's why you made that decision.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just felt the calling for it, and I'm not one of those people too, that downplayed education in school. I researched a day, and I was always into intellect, but it was just a calling to something I felt, and at that time I wasn't resonating. I mean, things wasn't going right. From Hazelwood Central, when I left Hazelwood Central early, I ended up going to another school in Maplewood. It was like more of a private type of school. That didn't work out, so it was just like several things I was spinning to until I got to the point where I was like, nah, I'm good. Like I'm shutting this down. I'm not gonna go music full time. So that's how that was.
Yeah. And I guess like I may be mistaken, but your first appearance was on both sides of the game.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go back a little bit. So when I met my cousin KP, that's when we started. We was NSC first, was still with Northside Coalition.
Gotcha.
So they already had the group prior to me. And they had 3 members, and then one of the members left, and they basically brought me in. So we started off as NSC, and we were just making demos, recording, and doing things ourselves. So I'm gonna tell you a funny story, like on how fate, like in Destiny and stuff, happened. Is that we were playing court, like when you had the tennis ball and stick or whatever, and somebody hit the ball at this lot we was in, and the ball rolled down this hill. So I, run to get the ball. And I see all these BMWs, I'm like, damn, who is this? Because I ain't never seen stuff like that at that time. So you just seen a street full of BMWs and like expensive cars. So it was these girls in the neighborhood that I knew, and they were going to see them, you know what I'm saying? So when the ball rolled down the hill, one of the guys picked it up, and I knew that they was getting money, you know what I'm saying? He picked the ball up and threw it to me, and I went up the hill. But what's funny is the same dude that threw me the ball ended up being the same dude that we ended up meeting later that ended up funding our career.
Wow. And I would assume was that PD?
No, that wasn't PD. So his name was
Yeah.
Now this was before PD was.
Yes.
So that was his name was Doty. You know what I'm saying? Doty. He had an independent label at that particular time, and what we did is like we did a thing at that time where we would just like take CDs and we would find numbers in the back of CDs, and we would call labels and be like, y'all accepting demos. So we went up to Streetside Records at that time, and we found his CD, and we were just calling everybody in St. Louis in that time, and he was the only one that responded back to us. So he ended up calling us back, and we ended up meeting with him, and then the rest was history. He took us under his wing and just managed us and basically funded our career from there.
Did he remember you for that moment, like you said, with the whole ball situation?
He remembered the situation. It took him a minute to think about it, but he was like, man, yeah, because the girl name was Taki. I said, yeah, they both live right there. And he was like, yeah, I remember that day, like, such and such and such. So that's just weird how destiny worked. That was the same person that was like very influential in my career. Like I said, he took us under his wing, paid for everything, funded our career, and etc. So big shouts out to Doty. Yeah.
And I would say, fast forward, what year was this?
This was, I want to say, the early 2000s.
Okay.
It had to be the early 2000s, because we was like, and that's another thing, we was young doing the stuff too, like 13, 14, 15 type of thing. So I want to say probably like early 2000s.
Was y'all appeared on both sides of the track? Were y'all still in that seat?
Nah, we was out of order at that time.
Gotcha.
So when we got with Doty, then we added a member, because it was me, KP, and No. You know what I'm saying? It was us 3, and then we added J Damage, which came later. Mm-hmm. And that's when once we added J Damage, that's when we was like, you know what? We're going to change our name to make it to come from the local sound of Northside Coalition to something more commercial, and that's when we came with Out of Order.
Out of Order. Mm-hmm. 2001 is when y'all released y'all debut album. The 2000 AD. Mm-hmm. There's a bunch of bangers on that track, man. On that, I was just, I was talking to you, I was listening, like, man, this man. Like, as a kid, how you in the kid, you probably rap with your parents. Like, from my perspective, you rap with your parents. You hear these songs when you grow up, you hear them again. Like, you like, kind of bring back, memories when you was a kid. That's how I felt just listening to it.
Yeah.
Now, during this time, this was during the time that Nelly had, just made his debut also. And I guess during this time, that's when St. Louis was kind of starting to, like, Nelly kicked the door in a little bit, but then it was still starting, eyes were looking at the city. How was the city during that time musically?
Well, when Nelly came in, St. Louis at that time on the music scene was, from what I can remember, was going more towards an independent situation. Like, you had No Limit Records. So anybody from that era remembers that St. Louis was a time where you had like PD Wax Records, mm-hmm. You had Sub-Zero Records, you had VIP, which was Spud over there. So everybody pretty much was independent at that time. So I remember even Nelly and them, I don't think that they was like with a label, but I think D2 up at Saints, they was, messing with D2, Darren and Dave, and, J.E., and, saying all them over there. So I remember at that time for being more independent, stemming from the South, watching Master P and everybody else coming in. Yeah.
Now, go back to your debut album. How did y'all be able to get Lil Jon and like Twista? Like, do they have? Because it seems like they mess with a lot of artists, local St. Louis artists during that time. Like, I'm familiar they was on the Whole Nine, also with Lil Jon anyway, was on the Whole Nine debut album. Like, where did that connection come in with, you know, I guess Chicago, Twista, and, you know, Atlanta, Lil Jon?
Well, at that time it was a guy named Kool-Aid. And everybody in St. Louis know DJ Kool-Aid. Right now, he's actually currently doing management with MJG and 8-Ball. But at that time, you know, Kool-Aid was a DJ, and along with Biscuit, actually, who was another guy that had a lot of contacts. But it was really Kool-Aid was a DJ, so he was just out there and he knew everybody. So he had relationships with Twister and Big Fub, who was Twister's manager at the time. And he knew Lil Jon them, you know what I'm saying? So he was able to help broker in that situation to go to them, you know what I'm saying, to bring back to PD. I don't know the full like actual story, but I do know Kool-Aid, Biscuit, and PD kind of like they all knew people. So, but it was mainly coming from Kool-Aid knowing people, bringing them back, and just making that connection. You know what I'm saying, with our label at the time, which was PD Wax Records.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And during this time, I guess you began to work with Zoe. Y'all wasn't Trak Starz at the time.
Nah, like Zoe didn't really come in. That was like, this is early in the beginning. Like this still kind of the Out of Order era.
Yeah.
You know, Zoe didn't.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Nah, you good. Like Zoe didn't come into. That was kind of when Out of Order was at the end stage.
Gotcha.
When we was kind of everybody was separating, going their separate ways. So the label, us being signed to the label, was pretty much over at that time when Zoe came in. Mm-hmm. But when I'm explaining to you now, it's like still early PD Wax.
Gotcha.
Out of Order.
Well, just kind of doing research. I thought at the time he was kind of like producing tracks with you during that time for Out of Order.
You talking about Zoe?
Yeah, yeah.
Now Zoe was. What's funny is about Zoe is that he was actually producing records with PD Wax.
Gotcha.
That a group that was signed with the label, but I didn't know Zoe at that time.
Gotcha.
But that was just what we call a coincidence, the connection that was already there too. Yeah.
When exactly did you and Zoe, I guess, meet?
Well, me and Zoe met in the later Out of Order days. Like, you know, once Out of Order started to, like, everybody started to go their separate ways, and we left the label. That was the ushering in with Zoe. Like, basically, and that was the whole Nine era. So when I left Out of Order, you know what I'm saying, I guess merged into the whole Nine situation. So Zoe came in, I want to say probably around the whole Nine situation. Yeah.
At one point, did y'all come up with the name Trak Starz? Is it just something that came, you know, later down the years, y'all just working together, and it just, you know, came out of, you know, just thought one day, it just came, well, we're gonna call ourselves Trak Starz. How did they come about?
Yeah, we were just vibing one day, coming up on names, and we would just track this. We had some other names, so Trak Starz was just one of the names we wrote down, and I want to kind of clear that up too, because at that time, like I told you, it was a friction. I don't want to say it was a friction like that, but it was a situation between us and the Trak Boys. Mm-hmm. So when we came up with the Trak Starz name, we would just write down a lot of names, and that just happened to be one of them. But we didn't never sit down and conspire to say, you know, we want to take the Trak Boys name, such. So we came up with the Trak Starz name was on the list. So we sent the names to Shaka, and he actually liked the Trak Starz. But me and Zoe sat down and thought about it and was like, now maybe we should change the name, you know what I'm saying, because it's a little too close to the Trak Boys. And that's when Shaka called us back and was like, you know, nah, you know what I'm saying, y'all should just keep the name, because, you know, my cousin is Tone and Poke, and anybody that knows Tone and Poke knows the Track Masters. So that was Shaka's, I think that was one of Shaka's cousins, one of them were. And he was like, nah, you know, my cousin are the Track Masters, so that's just a brand of a name, so just keep the name. But we did have a conscience about it, that we didn't really want to use it, but he was like, nah, just keep it. So that's how the name came. But we had other names prior to that.
Like I said earlier, like during this time, this was like, you know, when St. Louis music scene was starting to bubble. Why did you choose, with you being an artist yourself, why did you choose to, I guess, switch to producing versus one focus mainly on your rapping career?
I think at that time, you know, just learning from Out of Order and all the things that we went through in that particular time, like, I ain't gonna say it turned me out, turned me off or whatever, but it just switched my focus. Like, cause you know, it was a lot of business stuff that we went through that I didn't understand. And me, I'm always a thinker too. Like, I'm like, okay, I know I rap and I produce, but what's the best way that we can make it? Like, what's the fastest way that we can make this make sense? So I felt like, well, maybe if I just start producing and take it from that angle, it'll work a little better if I just kind of step back. So that's how I morphed into producing. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, because like I said, even in Out of Order, me and my cousin KP, we produced back then. So we was doing the beats, and you know, and the group collectively was writing the song. So I've always did it, but I just felt like that'll be the better thing to do at that time.
And you spoke about like during the end phase of Out of Order was when y'all started to work with the whole nine, and that was on their Out Here first project.
Yeah, that was on. Yeah,
Out Here when y'all began to work with them. How did that whole connection come about?
All right, so when Out of Order broke up, I was staying with my manager Dodie at the time. I think KP had left, everybody pretty much left, and it was just me and Dodie standing there. So at the house or whatever. So PD, who was big shouts out to PD, like rest in peace PD. He was the owner of PD Wax Records, who I was very close with, and we all was close with. That started our career as far as Out of Order. So PD found out about my situation. He was like, you ain't got no equipment. You ain't, you know what I'm saying, you ain't really doing that. So I got some equipment I ain't using right now. So PD dropped me off of MPC. And this rap called the JB10 at the time. Any producers know that, you know what the JB10 is. So PD drops off the off to MPC, and I believe he just had an extension cord, a startup disc, and the rack, and that was it. Like I was broke. Like I didn't have no sounds, nothing. And that's when I told you about. I took a PlayStation. This is a real story. Like I took a PlayStation and basically plugged it up to the back of the drum machine, and I took CDs and I just like sliced the snares and kicks, and I made my own snares and kicks. You know what I'm saying? And that's like
crazy,
so when I did Chaos, Everybody in the Club Up, those kicks I actually sliced was from off that song was from that PlayStation and that MPC.
That's wild.
I had a broke ass keyboard, MPC, and the PlayStation, and that's how I was getting my sounds. So that was pretty much at the end of the Out of Order situation. Coming to that, so I met so Chaos one day, and Chemo just pulled up at the house. It was weird. So I wake up in the morning, I'm working on some beats, and I see a 100.3 the beat van parked in the front yard. I'm like, what the hell is this? So Chaos comes to the door, and he was like, man, I know you got something left in you, man. Don't quit doing music, such. Because I was kind of discouraged at that time, because the group had just broke up. You know, we had a couple of deal offers and things that didn't pan out. So Chaos was like, dust yourself off, bro. Come on, we finna make some music. So they picked me up in the beat van. I packed up the equipment, jumped in the beat van, and went to his grandmother's basement. And that's when we started creating the whole nine music.
Yes. And that like you said, that CD itself with the whole nine, the whole movement, that was just a very iconic, movement in St. Louis in itself, along with other artists that came out. But just in the beginning, like I said, just listening back to the Out of Order debut CD, and with the success of Country Grammar, then with the whole nine, it was just a pivotal time in St. Louis music scene. After you began working with the whole nine, you began to, this collective began to make a buzz in the city as producers, starting to get, recognition as far as like being good producers. Was this the time that, I guess, Shaka Zulu caught wind of you guys, or was this before that?
Okay, so when we did Everybody in the Club Up, because a lot of people could get that confused because Nina Pop got so big, but Everybody in the Club Up was the actual song that we did that the deal was gotten for, like the MCA Records deal that they did at the time.
Gotcha.
So when we did Everybody in the Club Up, that's spending from me doing like 15 other records. I know Tar Boy was on the project. He had the records, Come Here Dirty, Let Me Holler You. So it was me, Tar, and that was pretty much it, but I pretty much did the bulk of the album. So, so from that particular point, once they got a deal from Everybody in the Club Up, growing big, that's when I got a call from this A&R named Salim. Now anybody in St. Louis know who Salim is. He was an A&R at Def Jam that was like calling everybody. He was scouting all the groups in the city at that time. And he actually even scouted us as Out of Order at one time. It just, things didn't pan out. But from that situation, I grew a relationship with Salim, and we just stayed cool. So he would always call, check on me. We would always talk. So when he caught wind of the deal that Chaos and Chemo got, he reached out to me and was like, do you have a manager? And I'm like, nah, I ain't got no manager. And he was like, well, I know this guy named Shaka Zulu over at DTP that's really good at managing producers. They got a nice squad over there. He may be interested in what y'all doing. So he basically, introduced us to Shaka. Shaka asked us to send all the music and stuff we had, and the rest was history. You know, he liked what we was doing. It was like, I want to work with y'all. And that's how we got with Shaka and Jeff, which was Ebony Sun Management, DTP.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I would say initially I had a relationship as, they were your manager, that Shaka was your manager, as far as when your first introduction with the DTP family.
Yeah, so prior to Shaka Zulu, we didn't have a manager. I didn't have a manager when I was solo with Chaos and Chemo, and you know, we didn't have a manager like prior, even I think kind of borderline on the Nina Pop stage, because right around the time when the Nina Pop came is when we was kind of in the talks with Shaka. But me and Zoe was just kind of doing everything ourselves before that, and then that's when everything opened up with Shaka and DTP.
Gotcha. And also during this time, T Love, he had a group himself. At the time, it was called Three Strikes.
Yeah, so Love had the group Three Strikes, which was Chingy, I believe, Tega, and Ahmad, which is Ali, little brother. Mm-hmm. And Love was managing them. They was actually on tour with Love. And, you know, Love had caught wind that we had the situation with DTP. And I had knew Lil Howard anyway, you know what I'm saying? Because when I was in Out of Order, we had kind of like, you know, crossed paths with him being in the group without warning. So we all knew each other around the St. Louis scene. So when Love caught wind of the DTP situation, he was like, you know, I got these guys I want y'all to, you know, work with, and we gonna get a demo together and shop them. And I think at that time they was on tour with the Lunatics. Yeah.
I seen Chingy talk about that in his Vlad TV interview.
Yeah.
Saying he opened up, you know, at the time for the Lunatics in Nelly.
Yeah. That was accurate. Yeah.
Now, fast forward a little bit. Like you said, you got introduced to Three Strikes from T Love, but the group ended up dismantling. Like, what was it about Chingy? You call it Lil Howard for people who don't know. Chingy, what was it about him that stood out that made you guys want to work with him and continue to work with him?
Well, for me, it was kind of I say relationship had a part to play in it, because I had already knew him from Without Warning. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And also too, when the group broke up, like, you know, he was the only one from them that I stayed in contact with. So when they broke up, like to the point where, you know, when Chingy was kicked out of his mother's house, you know what I'm saying, like, we helped each other in that particular time. That's how, like, close we was relationship wise. So it wasn't necessarily like that. It was just kind of more of like the relationship. And even from a creative aspect, now that I look back on it, we did see something in him, you know what I'm saying, as far as talent, his look and his voice, and it was unique. But it was kind of more of a relationship type of thing of how it came together, versus more like, okay, he the one and we gonna take him. It didn't really happen that way.
And this was after the situation with the group, it was around, what, 2002 when you guys began to, you know, work with him, and I guess began to make music, and it kind of led to, you know, the production of Jackpot. Yeah,
so once the group broke up, and we all made a decision to move in together, and that's when me, Zoe, and Chingy moved into the apartment. Anybody that's seen the BET interview, he actually took you to that apartment off Dalmore that we were staying in. That's actually where Zoe was staying in, and we just all decided to move in together. So when we all moved in together, that's when we started to create the songs. Now at this particular time, me and Zoe like had already been with DTP. Like, we was already like working on Ludacris and other stuff before, but then once the group broke up, we started to shift gears to focus on Chingy's music. You know what I'm saying? Because we was all just sitting around like, shit, well, you know, Shaka Zulu was our manager, so why don't we put some records together? And, you know what I'm saying, send him to Shaka and see what he think. And right there was one of those records. He was right about that on the Vlad interview, where like you know, we was you know, just playing around with a bunch of beats and some music, just vibing, and you know, right there came on it. He heard it, and then, you know, just started vibing to it. So that was one of the 4 songs that was on the demo that we created at that time and sent to Shaka Zulu.
Yes. Let's go back before we continue. It's something that caught my attention. You said that you was already working with DTP, but just from hearing like your story and, you know, Chingy's side story, I was still sleeping in like a 1-bedroom apartment. Like, I ain't had no money.
Man, we was the brokest Negroes in the city at that time. We was broke. Zoe was playing in a band called Dr. Chevegas, and Dr. Chevegas is a cover band, you know. So that's how we was really making the money from him, making money from the band. And me and Chingy was broke as hell. Like, we ain't had no money. Like, we were just starving musicians and artists trying to make it. So Zoe just basically took us in, and we just used every resource we had to You know what I'm saying? Making it. Then, you know, when we signed with Shaka and DTP, like it wasn't like a record deal either. Now it did come to a point where we was kind of struggling for money. And Shaka then was like, you know, I'm gonna send y'all some money. We thought we was balling too. I remember Shaka sent us like $5,000 a piece. He was like, okay, I'm gonna send y'all something. Sent us $5,000 a piece, and we thought we was rich, like we was balling at that time. So, but prior to Shaka sending us money, like it wasn't a deal. So, you know, usually when the artists sign a deal, they have an advancement and such. But Shaka was just kind of like taking us in and developing us. So it wasn't really no money out the gate, and that's why, you know, we kind of struggled at that time. But yeah.
Yeah. And I'll get back on track. You said that, you know, I guess you guys making the tracks and ended up cooking up a demo and shopping it out to various labels, and Shaka was the one who drew attention to it as far as with the Right Here soundtrack. I know you told me a funny story about that, as far as like, you know, I flew out, I guess, to meet with labels or whatever, have a meeting about it, and I ended up losing the track.
Oh man, yeah. So now this is exclusive right here because we never really told the story like this. But so I'm gonna go back a little bit. So when we sent the demo to Shaka, Right There was the first song that they heard, and they loved it out the gate. So they called us back and was like, you know, we love this song. You know, we want to get it pressed up and put it out. So we was like, cool. So he was like, I want you and, you know, Zoe to go to an engineer in St. Louis, whoever y'all work with, and get Right There mixed. So me and Zoe went and got Right There mixed, and we put it out locally. So the version that the early people heard was the original version that we lost. So that was the first version. So when we got the deal with Capitol Records, we flew out to LA and to mix the song. So we signed the deal. Get the advances, everything is going legally, everything good. So the next step is Capitol wanted us to remix Right There over with bigger engineers, which is typical in the music industry. So that next day, me and Zoe go to the studio, and we sitting with the engineer, and we pull up the session, and it's gone. And I'm looking at Zoe like, shh, like where the session at, bro? Like, and he looking at me like, what happened? Like, we don't know. So we going through all our hard drives, we scrambling, we panicking. And we like can't find it. So me and Zogo talking private, and we like, yo, like we got to do something because I don't know how are we going to tell Shaka Zulu and Wendy Goldstein, the VP that signed us at the time, like how are we going to tell them that the song is gone, the beat. So me and Zoe, if I remember correctly, we came up with something, a family emergency or something like that, and we was like, we got to go back home. Something came up, so we flew back to St. Louis. Mixed, you know what I'm saying, redid it and flew back to LA. And what's crazy is when we redid it over, a lot of the stuff we got almost perfect, but the bass line, because I know when I played the bass line, I was drunk as hell when we did that. So I struggled because I was just in the zone drinking, just do, you know what I'm saying. So that's probably one of the only parts that we struggled the most on, because I didn't really remember the keys because I freelanced it. But that was funny to the point that nobody ever knew that we redid it. And like I told you, like, so later on, when we end up finding the song again, like we end up moving our home studio to another location. And we were just going through our disc, cleaning out the studio, and we end up finding the damn session. We like, damn, it was right here. Like, how did we miss that? And we end up playing the session, and it sounded nothing like the one that everybody hear today. Yeah, it's crazy. And we never told nobody that. We kept it top secret up until now.
That's crazy, man. That's crazy. I bet y'all, like you said, y'all was panicking. Like, what the hell? Like, everything, y'all just got the deal. And something they, wanted is gone.
Everything we worked for, me and Zoe looking at each other like, we done got this deal, got to this point, and we finna mix the biggest song of our life, and it's gone. The beat I'm talking about, gone. We flew back to St. Louis and did everything from scratch. And like I said, it had to be just our destiny and fate, because when we listened to the original one, it was completely different. So me being on my spiritual journey, like I'm thinking like, well, maybe that one might not have had the impact globally as this one have, and it was just meant for us to do it over.
Probably.
Because we don't even know how, because I think we end up finding it on the hard drive, like it just damn popped up on there or something, like it was crazy. So yeah.
Now, was Kanye West supposed to be on the remix?
Yeah. So we were in the studio, and Kanye and DJ Quick was the first ones to hear it right there. And so when we were working on Right There, mixing it, and Kanye actually came to the studio session. You know what I'm saying? He actually had a studio session already on the other side, but he came into our session. And Kanye came in there, and this was the backpack Kanye. Not the one y'all see today, but this is a Through the Wire Kanye. So Kanye comes into the studio, he here right there. He started mimicking, and you know what I'm saying, he loved the record and he wanted to get on there. And originally, that was going to be the format, but Shaka was like, nah, you know, we want to keep it like the same. We don't want to mess up the formula of the record that, you know what I'm saying, we don't want to mess up the formula and the energy that this record is gaining. So they was like, nah. But yeah, he actually was going to be on there, and it was considered, but you know, it just didn't turn out. So
Gotcha. It would have been tight. Midwest collab like that, especially again, and looking back in hindsight, yeah, that would have been crazy.
Yeah, I look at it like that too, but I also look at it too like that if Kanye was on the record, would it may have had the same impact too? Would it may have brought a different element? Because you got to remember, Kanye wasn't Kanye we see today. He was Through the Wire Kanye, and as a matter of fact, I don't even know if he even had a deal at that point. He was still like, he had just put out Through the Wire, and he was still moving around, so he was bubbling. So we do think about that, but I don't know if it would have came out the same. Yeah. And plus us coming from St. Louis, we got an opportunity outside of what Nelly and them was doing was to show our culture. And to me, it would have kind of been too early for that at that particular time. Gotcha. So yeah.
Gotcha. Now, were you guys primarily stationed once y'all sat on Capitol Records, were y'all primarily stationed in LA, or were y'all still back here in St. Louis? Like,
no, we was actually still in St. Louis. We were just kind of flying back and forth. Like if Capitol booked us out in LA, we'd go to LA. If Shaka wanted us down in Atlanta, we'd go to Atlanta. So we were just moving around everywhere at that time.
Yeah. Was y'all first time ever being in the city?
I think Zoe may have traveled, but I know for myself, I had been to California before when I was younger because I got family out there.
Gotcha.
So yeah, but not on the level how we was moving around at that time. But you know, we was younger too when we made those trips. Yeah.
But by this time, y'all stars, in a sense, y'all celebrities in a sense, up and coming.
Yeah.
How was the culture then from that perspective? Like as far as y'all starting to get the attention, being noticed and stuff from being on the scene. Like how was the culture in LA then versus being in St. Louis where it's just more of a local chill vibe versus you around celebrity stars, things like that?
To me, it was kind of the same. You know what I'm saying? As you see it today. Of course, it's a little different, but the gang culture, since the 70s and 80s, that's always been a part of California. You know what I'm saying? But as far as the actual music and the culture, to me, it was kind of the same. But the only difference is, like we say with the social media, things are more magnified. You had check-in culture, like I told you about. It still was things that was going on underground. People were still getting robbed. It was all the same stuff going on. But like I said, it wasn't as magnified. So me and Zoe didn't have Instagram or Facebook to get on there and be like, yo, we at the W Hotel, flashing out jewelry, we getting money out here. So, but I can imagine if they had it at that time, then maybe our situation would have even been different. But the fact that we didn't have that, it kind of kept it a little bit more low-key. But I'm kind of glad we didn't have it. Because now that I look back, we would have exposed too much, which I think is a problem today. It's just, everything is overexposure. Cats leaking a video or see your address at the bottom like with Pop Smoke and something happened. Mm-hmm. So it was the same, but it just wasn't over, publicized how it is with social media.
Have you ever, during that time you said with the check-in, had to deal with a situation like that?
Yeah, obviously we did. So I want to say this right. So I think from Chingy's situation is, I think Chingy had a show in Ludacris somewhere, if I'm not mistaken, and that's how we end up running into the 60s, the rolling 60s out there. I think they was backstage, and we got introduced to them, and that's how we kind of started merging with them. So it all stemmed from Chingy. But prior to that, me and Zoe was just kind of checking in town and checking in and out and kind of staying under the radar. Nobody knew who he was. But when they seen us that day, we had these big Trak Starz chains on. It just drew attention, and that's when we started mingling with the rolling 60s, getting to know them and they getting to know us. And then that's when they kind of figured it out, okay, y'all with him, type of thing. And then that's when they merged in with us, and that's how that happened.
Yeah. Now, I guess back then, or even like you said to now, more so checking in the sense, it's more so for checking in and let us know you. It's more protection thing, yeah. Especially out there, so you won't have any troubles, anything like that. Did it lead to anything like that? As far as where it became a thing where you say y'all built a relationship, but then it become a thing where, hey, when y'all come here, let us know y'all here, so you make sure y'all good, or et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it definitely became that. Once we, formed a relationship with the 60s, then that's when it kind of was like, okay, we finna establish something with y'all, you know what I'm saying, type of thing. Let's sit down at the table. So when y'all come to LA, make sure y'all holler at us, you know what I'm saying, when y'all get here. And that's when I told you the funny story of, I think, I want to say Holiday Inn was maybe out at this time, or kind of close to One Call Away. And me and Zoe was feeling ourselves. We was like, and this was like months in between us meeting the Rolling 60 Crips. So we was coming in and out of LA meeting with them before this happened. So so one day we feeling ourselves. We ain't checking in with no damn body, you know what I'm saying? And so we come in, we feeling heavy, we got our chains, jewelry, and that night we go out to this nightclub that was on, I believe it was on Sunset. So we felt we were safe. We on Sunset right here in Hollywood, everything good. We could sneak in under the radar and be good. So me and Zoe at the table with these females, and we just sitting there having drinks, vibing to the music. And I look up at the door and I see these red shirts. Now, I didn't think none of it at the time because they 60. So I'm like, all these dudes with red shirts walk in. So they walking around the club, and I see this skinny dude named Tylo, the skinny dark dude with French braids. And I see Tylo getting closer, and I'm like, is that Tylo? And he just came up to the table and slammed it like, bro, we know where y'all at all times. Don't never do that again, bro.
Don't try to play with us, man.
Yeah, don't play with us, man. Like, when y'all come in town, check in, we know where you at. We laughed about it and it was funny, but me and Zoe was like, damn, like.
It just show you how serious it is, though. Exactly. Before you say that happened then is now with social media, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It was always going on, but I'm gonna share some positive, because I know a lot of people call it extortion. I know a lot of people call it a lot of things, but I ain't one of them type of people that's like, don't do it or do it. Whatever you feel to do is what you want to do as far as checking in. But one thing I will say on a positive note is that now that I look back on it, it did keep us out of some trouble that we could have got into. Because we was on the radar. We walking around with $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 chains and, jewelry. We got, #1 album in the country, millions of dollars. So people was watching us. And we they would come back to us and tell us several times, like, such and such, y'all on such and such radar. Y'all on such and such radar. But because we was aligned with them, we was good, you know what I'm saying, type of thing or whatever. So on the shared positivity on it, it did help us. Because I can imagine if we didn't have that, on what could have possibly happened to us if we didn't have that protection.
Now, like you said, I had the success of Jackpot, and I, starting to basically live life a little bit, in a sense, live the good life, in a sense. Chingy had the success of Jackpot, and then the situation happened on his end with DTP. The whole situation, kind of spoke about that himself. And he ended up, getting dropped from DTP. He still was with Capitol Records, but he ended up getting dropped from DTP. In the midst of, the situation that he had going on with DTP and whatever, you guys continued to work with both. Like, how did you stay out the mix up of that whole situation, especially with you guys coming in originally with Chingy? And, well, I guess in a sense y'all was with DTP first, but still y'all kind of, that homegrown relationship.
Yeah. We just stayed neutral through the whole situation. Like, we knew everything that was going on from the DTP side, and we knew everything that was going on from the Chingy side. And when you look back on all of that, and me and Chingy talk about that to this day, that it really was just a lot of misunderstanding. I don't know how deep he got into the story, but he hired a lawyer from here, St. Louis, that was supposed to be an entertainment lawyer, and this lawyer was basically accusing DTP of stealing money from him. And that's how that whole thing happened. But we kept a relationship with everybody. We just stayed out of the way. We always talked to Chingy, we always talked to Shaka and Jeff and Ludacris, and just let them know that, like, we just here to make music, man. We don't know we don't have full detail enough to know what's going on in these situations. So you're right, we just completely stayed out of the middle of it. Like, you know what I'm saying? We don't get me wrong, like, if Chingy was to call me, we'll talk about it. And if we got with Shaka, we would sit down and talk about it. But, we just looked at it from a perspective because we didn't have control over Chingy money. We didn't have control over DTP money. So we couldn't really speak on it. But from a neutral standpoint, we just tried to keep it as cool with everybody as we could. You know what I'm saying? Type of thing.
Gotcha. Now, like I said, after the situation, well, with the situation with Chingy, with the success of, you guys kind of collab project with Chingy, you guys began to look for more local acts to kind of help them break through with the scene, and in a sense, kind of build up y'all own label in a sense.
Yeah, so after Right There, Holiday Inn, and One Call Away, and the success of Chingy, that was our goal to discover more talent in St. Louis, and also in the midst of that, work with other artists in the business. So those were the two goals that we had when we just, from leaving from the DTP situation, that became our main focus. You know what I'm saying? So you're right. So we just scanned around the city for, up and coming artists, but mainly just focused inside the industry, because that's still at the time where our money was coming from. Yeah.
Yeah, I ended up working with Britney Spears, Madonna, just a few, just to name a few. Like, and also it's just one, but I know it's still kind of associated with Chingy, but the Janet Jackson song, No, Don't Worry.
Yeah.
Like, how was that like to work with somebody so iconic?
Man, like I'm not starstruck at all. Like, I've never really been into that type of stuff, but I will be honest and say that Janet Jackson kind of touched me. I never thought sleeping on the floor, being broke as hell in U City, working on Chingy album, barely, have money to buy a box of rice, that I would be in the lights of Janet Jackson. Not only being in the lights of her, standing next to her, but actually producing her vocals. So to me, that was kind of like, man, that was kind of a mind trip to me. Like, because, we all kids, we grew up on the Jackson. So we watching the Jackson Story, Michael Jackson, such. And then to be in the studio with his sister that fast, actually producing her vocals, was kind of crazy. I'm like, man, like, and it was just funny too, because me and Zoe first walked in there, you could tell she kind of noticed the energy too. Like, she like, give her a hug, come here, give me a hug, like we could. And I'm like, you don't understand what y'all done to us. As far as inspiring, family, the Jacksons. And just to be here is amazing, type of thing. So, like I said, I ain't really a starstruck person, but that was something else. Yeah.
And still, you work with other stars, it was up like, what, 2004?
Yeah, probably about 2004 or 5.
But before that, you worked with Britney Spears, Madonna.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how did those, like, were you in the studio, or just kind of like made the beat and just sent it to them?
Now, so the way that situation happened is that they actually had an original version of Me Against the Music.
Yeah.
The label kind of felt it could be better. You know what I'm saying? So they contacted us, reached out to us, and was like, we love you guys' sound, and we want you guys to take a stab at doing this record over, because we feel like the original one is cool, but we want to take it more global to another level, more dance. Because at that time we was known for dance records, from Holiday Inn and even the Houston. I like that. So basically, I believe it was Barry Weiss, who was the owner at Jive. I think he was the president of Jive at that time. Barry Weiss connected us with Larry Rudolph and Adam, who was Britney's manager, and they basically sent us to STEM. So it was just me and Zoe really on the phone with them, the label, in between Britney Spears and Madonna, just going back and forth with them, talking back and forth, because they had a hectic schedule when we did. So it was a thing where we kind of just had to go back and forth with them on the phone to make sure the vocals was right, make sure everything was going in the right direction,
Gotcha. You just brought up another artist that you work with, Houston.
Mm-hmm.
There's a track you did with Chingy that I like that.
Yeah.
Whatever happened in Houston? Like, you just kind of, I know, the situation, that he had, out of the country, but other than that, like, whatever happened with him?
Well, when he had the eye incident where he stabbed his eye out, I believe he was in the UK when this happened. Mm-hmm. But from that, I heard that, he went to rehab, he went and got help, and he's actually doing a lot better. It's somebody that reached out to me on Instagram, like maybe about 3 or 4 weeks ago, that runs his fan page. And they was, texting me back and forth, and they actually texted me and said that he had something new out or something. I didn't even know that. So from what I've heard and know, just people that's close to their camps, is that, he's good, like he's recovered, and he's kind of slowly introducing himself back. But prior to that, me and Zoe seen signs. We seen signs that I feel like a lot of people from Capital ignored. Like when you meet somebody, I know me personally, like when I meet somebody, like I can tell. That's just like if somebody on drugs or something, you can kind of tell they fidgeting or something weird. Like you kind of know when something off sometimes with people. So when we first met Houston, me and Zoe knew that he was dealing with something mental. like I'll give you an example. Like we were working on another song. This is when I Like That is already out on the radio. It's doing big. It's blowing up. So Capitol wanted us to go in with Houston to try to get another record. So they booked studio time for us. Houston and his girlfriend Misa at the studio in this studio called Larrabee North that we used to always work out of. So Zoe's in the studio with the engineer. I'm sitting in the studio with Houston and his girlfriend playing a video game, and we just talking. And Houston told his girl, was like, "Can you step out for a second?" And she was like, "Cool." She stepped out. So Houston sitting on the couch looking at me, and I'm like, "You good, bro?" Like he just like staring at me, and then he just got up and was like, "I'm a flop, Sham." And I'm like, "Nah, I don't think you're gonna flop, bro. You got the biggest song on the radio out right now in the world. I don't think you're gonna flop." And I was like, if Capitol put the right money behind you, the right situation, you know what I'm saying, I think you're gonna be good. And he was like, "You really believe that?" And I was like, "Yeah, you're gonna be good, bro." I was like, just following Chingy's success, I can kind of see the pattern. So he just started pacing around this little area, and I'm getting nervous. I'm like, I'm watching him, and he was like, "I'm a flop." Like he just started screaming, like, and flipping stuff over. And I'm just like, whoa, I'm bagging back. Like, and then from there, he ran out the studio. I don't even know what happened with the girl, but I remember they said he ran out the studio and jumped on his motorcycle and had an accident leaving the studio, a motorcycle accident on the highway, on the freeway. So we seen signs like that, and we knew something was off. And I'll give you another example. Now, we wasn't there when this happened, but Chingy and his manager, Keith, told us a story to where they was in Jamaica. And at this time, Capitol Records had like this function where a lot of different labels were in Jamaica meeting up for this DJ festival. So Capitol Records had rented us these villas, these mansions, where we like all had our individual mansion. So Chingy and them threw a mansion party that night. And I believe, I don't want to tell the story wrong, but I don't know if it was over capacity, it was too many people, and they couldn't let people in. Houston was trying to get in, and they wouldn't let him in. So from the story I got, this dude climbs up the balcony of the mansion, like climbs it, goes over the balcony, and you know, right where the balcony area ends. So imagine Chingy or somebody sitting down, and they see a balcony, they look out the balcony and see somebody, like this dude literally climbed up the thing, got into the party, and they said he tracked mud all through the party, through the villa, like he was like, because you know, he was, I guess when he was trying to climb up, he was stepping in this mud, so he was just tracking mud through the whole thing. And so it was little stuff like that, like we was just seeing little things, like he would just be acting kind of strange. And I remember telling Zoe, I was like, "Man, there's something ain't right about this kid, bro. Like I kind of feel something off." But I think Capitol may have felt it, they just ignored it, because I don't think labels really care about nothing like that. But we seen it, you know what I'm saying, firsthand.
Yeah, music industry, just that, not even just the music industry, the industry in the whole is, you gotta be, you know, very strong, like mentally. I heard a few people say stuff like, you know, you ain't got the mental capacity, you're gonna crumble in that industry, man.
Man, it's a lot of pressure, and I think also too, it's a lot of people that's at the top of these labels. Like when you talk about when you hear Charleston White and Charlamagne the God, and people talk about, like when Charlamagne was interviewing Lear Cohen, and he asked Lear Cohen, he said, you know, if y'all know that artists are perpetuating this violence, like why are y'all pushing it? And that's the same thing with Houston. Like I believe that Capitol knew, but they didn't care. And I'm gonna tell you another funny story too, is that when we signed with Black Brown Records in, I believe, 2006, Barry Hankerson signed us over there, which is Aaliyah's uncle, that is over Timbaland, Missy Elliott, Static Major, and all these people. So Barry, this is a real story. So Barry actually reached out to us and was like, "What do y'all think about signing Houston?" And at the time, me and Zoe, like, he just stabbed his eye out and almost killed himself and jumped out of a building in the UK. Like, we like, "Nah, I don't know about that." So Barry called us up the next day and was like, "I think y'all should consider that. You know, he'll be like a rock star. You know, he stabbed his eye out. It'll be crazy. You know what I'm saying? And we'll just play off of that and make him to like this crazy rock star." So me and Zoe was like, "I don't know about that, bro." We had a conscience about it because we seen the mental stuff. And in Barry's defense too, he wasn't there like we was to see a lot of that. But still, that should still be enough to be like, it's something wrong with this kid. Stabbing his eye out and then jumping out of a building. And then another thing too, if his security or whoever in that hotel wouldn't have called him, he'd have been dead. Because when he stabbed his eye out, he literally was trying to commit suicide from there. So he stabbed his eye out and then he ran to the window and he was finna kill himself. But they caught him right before he could jump. So I don't think Barry and a lot of people knew the severity of it, like how serious it was when that happened. But me and Zoe was like, nah, man, we ain't doing that. But they really wanted to do it. They wanted us to contact him. Barry was like, we could put a patch over his eye. We could have his shirt off and hair all over his head. He could be like crazy. He was like, people would love it. But that's how these people think. They just in it to make money. Like, they not looking at the mental state of these artists that they bringing in. They just like, they not like, you know, taking them to A&R classes or media training. Like back in the days, you had A&R development where the artists will be developed. But now it's like, let's just make some money. We don't give a damn what happened. Let's just put them out there. So me and Zoe was like, nah, we ain't doing that.
Especially like nowadays, they probably don't have time to even train some of these artists, like you say, like media training or the AR production, stuff like that. Is because most of these people getting discovered like on TikTok, Instagram, overnight success. They hear this song and they say, we're gonna push this song, and that's probably the only agenda they have, just to push this song to make the money off of it. And then they have the writers and stuff like that to try to push their image based off their song, and they got them hype. They don't really care about, like you said, they don't care about how you feel and then like they just want to make some money. Like you said, go back to interview with Charlamagne we did with what's his name?
Leo Cohen.
Yeah, Leo Cohen. And when he asked him that, he responded like, "Hey, I got a family to feed." Like basically, he said it right there. I don't care. I got a family to feed. I don't care what you're saying. I'm gonna push whatever I got to make this money.
The same thing they was thinking when they wanted us to sign Houston. This kid is obviously mentally sick, and you want to capitalize off that, off him being mentally sick. You know what I'm saying? And like you said, that's the label, and it also stems back from outside of social media. It was a time where people start getting these local hits on the radio, and the DJs will blow it up locally in the city, and the labels back then at that time would sign people off that, like Huey, Pop, Lock, and Drop It. Like a lot of those artists that got signed because the DJs here were supporting it, and it blew up, and they were signing them. So the labels just started running with that format, and to me, that's when A&R started to kind of go away. They started depending on the regional success of the artist to sign them. So say if you had a record that was bubbling in Chicago or St. Louis and it was doing big numbers, the labels would call and be like, okay, let's get them, and then we'll just take our power and put it behind it and put it out. So they were kind of doing the same thing at that point that what social media doing right now. Same thing, yeah.
And Huey's producer, that made the Pop, Lock, and Drop It beat. Was he part of I guess like you said, y'all had the Trak Starz production. Was his producer under that also? Yeah, so Popo, he wasn't necessarily, so when he did Pop, Lock, and Drop It with Huey, he wasn't under us at that time. Now, I was close with his manager, and this goes back again to Dodie, the one that I told you earlier with the Out of Order days who discovered us. Like, so Dodie, you know what I'm saying, he's talented, you know what I'm saying, so he has a way to knowing how to discover talent, produce. He's always been like that, finding producers, artists. To me, that's always been his gift. So he found Popo, and he started managing Popo. And that was around the time that Poe, you know what I'm saying, was in the midst of doing the Huey Pop, Lock, and Drop It. So what we did as the Trak Starz is, after they did Pop, Lock, and Drop It, we basically helped them get a publishing deal. So we took them under our wing and umbrella as the Trak Starz, because we already had a deal with Universal Music. And we flew them up to LA at the time where we were at, and brokered in a publishing deal. So we took that and basically, you know, just helped them with the business end of it, you know, that type of thing. Yeah. Was it the deal with Universal? Was it like a distribution or just like a joint, like where you had the Trak Starz records? What made you, because this after, you know, Jackpot, and you kind of, you know, like I say, you went on to do your own thing, try to discover more artists, local acts in a sense. What made you choose Universal?
Well, okay, let me clear that up too a little bit. So Universal Rondor Music is a publishing company.
Gotcha.
That was actually for just publishing.
Gotcha.
Blackground Records was actually signed to Universal at the time we did the deal. So Trak Starz Music was signed under Blackground Universal, and Universal Rondor Publishing was our publishing company.
Gotcha.
And that's who, we didn't sign Popo to Trak Starz Music with Barry Hankerson and Blackground. We did a publishing deal through Universal Rondor. Gotcha. And that's when the Suge Knight incident happened, and we'll talk about that later, but that's how all that's connected, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, kind of, you know, fast forward, just stay in this moment for a little bit. Like, for us, you trying to find local acts. Today, why don't you think that St. Louis has had, you know, another breakthrough artist since, you know, the Nelly, Chingy, Jaquan, even Huey, since that time? I mean, we had artists like current artists like, you know, we got Smino. I guess Smino.
Yeah, Smino,
SZA. But like for like local, like with the 33 Grammys and Sexy Red, you've had those kind of, you know, getting a name. But why haven't we had that like to this level where Chingy and Nelly has had with their success, all that notoriety?
Me personally, and I'm glad you asked me that, because that's something that we've been meeting and talking about for years. Being a producer and somebody that's been around like talented artists my whole life, and getting the opportunity to actually see how the music industry works from the inside, to me, I think one of the problems is that you have the record industry. To me, is based off of hit records. Period. Master P said it best. He said, "You haven't been in the music industry until you had a hit record." So I think the struggle comes from that. When you had Chingy, for example, you had us. We already came from a lot of hit records, the whole nine, such. You had J.E., you had D2, who was a lot of creative people over there. You had Tallboy and Joe, who was the Track Boys with Quan. So a lot of artists at that time, even Jibbs had the Beasters, which was Reese Beast, his brother DJ. So at that particular time, the artists had teams of real producers around them. You know what I'm saying? And we were really constructing records to compete with the music industry. And I think the problem is today is that it's not enough of us anymore. You know what I'm saying? You got artists that's getting beats off YouTube, you know, and no disrespect, like I ain't one of them type of dudes that be like, I'm gonna get on what the young dudes doing, because I don't believe in it. I believe in evolution. Like, things are always going to evolve, whether you like it or not. But I will say, it's beyond just putting a ski mask on and dreads and just holding up a bunch of pistols and jumping in the studio and making a record. I'm gonna even say this: when you look at Chief Keef, which my guy Noah Universe, who was an artist that we work with, and shout out to Noah Universe, man, he'll tell you that before Chief Keef started popping, I was watching Chief Keef, and I remember going back to Noah Universe, and I was like, bro, this kid Chief Keef out of Chicago finna go. And at that same time, he was doing the same drill music as you hear today. But what was different with Chief Keef to me, and even King Von, is that they was gangster dudes, because I don't want to take away your struggle. Whatever you go through is what you go through. But they was gangster dudes, but they still was making music. Even if they diss you in the record, it still sound good. You know what I'm saying? Don't like. Even King Von, I always say this. King Von went into the studio and said, you know what? I'm going to tell stories with my rap. Shout out to DJ Chop Squad. You know, that was all DJ and Chop Squad with that. So, who was from St. Louis. So, Von went in the studio and said, I'm going to tell a story. And I'm going to use this different cadence to get my issue off. It was a block on the stripper chin. She's from Tennessee. Like, it was a different flow he had. And then he told a story. So, it was creative. So, you can be gangster. You can be what you want to be. But you still got to make records that can compete in the industry. Mm-hmm. That's why I got respect for Dirk. I got respect for these guys because they're making records. And to me, that's the difference. Now, well, you might get an underground buzz in the following. Yeah. But will it translate into the music industry globally is what the question is. So to me, I think that's the problem. I just don't think it's enough production around these people that's building these records to say, hey bro, we got to make some songs. I know we got ops over here. I know we got problems in the streets, but this is a business and we have to make songs to compete. Yeah. They
just recording, like you said, when it comes like producing or the engineers, whatever, they just recording what the artist said. Okay, we just gonna record it. It's a song you want to do, just alright, just do it. It's basically taking that money and just say, okay, that's what it is. Versus actually sitting there and working with the artists. Like you said, we got producers. Metro, you know, he kind of based out of Atlanta, but he's from here. Mm-hmm. You know, even with DJ, mm-hmm. and you know various others. But we got local producers that's coming up like Ali Knock. What's that? I can't think of the tracks. I can't think of all of them. But yeah, mm-hmm. we got a few of them that's coming up in the city. But there's some of us trying to work with certain artists, but then it's the artists too that's stuck in their ways. They just want to get a quick gimmick.
And I'm going to say I'm kind of partially blaming it on YouTube and social media, because social media draws this illusion that I can just jump on there and do what I want to do and become famous. But when you're talking, what you can do is what you can. You look at Charleston White and all these people, but when it comes to the music business, in the deep depths of the business, you got to have a record to compete. That's why, like, you will see artists like they'll have a big social media presence. Like I seen Lil Boosie. Like when Lil Boosie was like, how do I got millions of followers, but I'm only selling a couple of thousand records? So all y'all people in my live, all of this stuff, y'all not buying my record. So social media, so have people under the illusion that I could just jump on here and do something, and I could put a record out and it's gonna sell records. It don't work that way.
Like with young lady named Sweetie.
Sweetie, I just heard about that.
She said she sold like 2,000 copies of her CD, and she got millions of followers. Like, they don't add up. People, they have their, like you said, the illusion that I'm popular, I'm this and that because of the numbers on social media, but you still got to put the work in when you come to your artistry or whatever you do, as far as music, making clothes or whatever. You can't just depend on that popularity with these numbers on social media and just expect to have that success at all.
Not at all. I mean, you see people like Taylor Swift, you see a lot of these pop artists, you know what I'm saying, that you might not even see on social media that much. They might have a label or somebody that posts pictures and control their stuff, but you don't see nothing because they're focusing more on the music. And sometimes when you operating off antics and doing a lot of antics, that's all people will want to see you for. They don't want to hear your music. So it's like, I want to see you entertain and act a fool. I don't want to hear your music, you know what I'm saying? So that becomes more of the selling point than people actually taking your craft serious. And to me, because social media is a blessing and a curse. And the curse is that, yeah, I can get popular. I mean, the blessing is I can get popular, but the curse is, like, you know, will this translate into success beyond people seeing me act a fool on here and do whatever I do?
I'm gonna go back to Blackground Records. Static Major, was he part of that also?
Yeah, Static was signed. He was under Barry Hankerson.
Gotcha. How influential was he to you guys' career in a sense?
Man, like, Static really changed our life. You know what I'm saying? Because at the time when we were writing and, you know what I'm saying, being producers and writers, like, it was certain things even me as a writer, I didn't understand how to quite format certain things how Static did, even though I came from a group and we kind of knew it. But when you're dealing with R&B and cadences and all these things, it's completely different. So Static set us down and really taught us how to write songs. You know what I'm saying? We would, like, Static had this formula where he would take the beat. So if the beat was like boom, boom, cat, Static would be like, and he'll hum something. He'll hum the whole song, record it, and then he'll go back and listen to it and write down what he hummed. You know what I'm saying? He the first one that taught me that. So he would come up with a melody, and he would hum the melody on the hook, the verse into the whole song, and he would just go back and write to it. I'm like, bro, I've never seen it in my life until I met Static. You know what I'm saying? So Static, man, was very influential. That was our brother. Like, we would stay in the studio with Static to 6, 7 in the morning, like, every day, to the point where we even had his first single, which was a record called Till the Wheels Fall Off. Unfortunately, they didn't get to market it because right when he did Lollipop with Lil Wayne, it's like right when he transitioned, like, shortly after that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But yeah, Static, man, was a blessing because he taught us a lot. Legend.
And that's like you said, like, was my introduction, you know, on the public side. Like I said, I'm not in it, so I'm sure y'all cross paths, you know, in that way. But just publicly, that's when I figured out who Static was. You know, with the Lollipop record with him and Lil Wayne. Then it was, like you said, during the time, it was like a big thing, sad to say, but it was during the time when he passed away. Yeah,
unfortunately, man. Yeah, we didn't get the, because like I said, right when he passed is right when we get the record Till the Wheels Fall Off, which was going to be Static first single, and then he went to do the Lollipop, and then he did another record, I believe, that was featuring Lil Wayne, and then it, like I said, it happened right in between that time. So, but Static, man, is a legend. He's a monster. To me, one of the greatest songwriters of all time. And I'm not just saying that because he passed, but Static, to me, was one of the greatest of all time. You know what I'm saying? As far as all the Aaliyah, that whole Timbaland, Genuine, just all those big records from that era, Static pretty much had his hand in all of them. You know what I'm saying? So shout out to Static. You know what I'm saying? So yeah.
Now y'all got, I guess, a few good accolades under. Got some accolades, honestly, belittle it, but got some accolades under y'all belt as far as you Grammy Award winner.
Yeah.
You don't think you highlight that enough, man?
Yeah, you know, yeah, man, it didn't really hit us. You know what I'm saying? But like when we were, because we were just going through the motion. It's just like when LeBron playing in the game, And they'd be like, do you realize you had a triple double? And he'd be like, no, what did I have? Like, you don't even know because you're just so in the mix of the energy. But it didn't hit us till later, like, damn, we won a Grammy. Like, it's people out here that ain't never seen a Grammy. I'm talking about legends in the game that never came close to it. And we actually got credited for that. So that was a big time. And not only did we win from Ludacris' Release Therapy album, but we got a chance to work with some monsters in the game of hip hop, which was Pimp C, rest in peace. Like, so I'm honored to say that as legendary as Pimp C is, we got a chance for Pimp to get our beat and rap over it, and, you know, bless us with that. C Murder, you know what I'm saying, from No Limit, Benny Siegel, and Ludacris. And the song was basically about people being in jail and keep your head up type of thing, do your time. Mm-hmm. So that was big for us.
Was C Murder, was he locked up, man?
Yeah, he was in jail. And I think what's crazy is some type of way they recorded his verse through jail like they do sometimes, and they was able to piece it on there. So yeah,
that's dope. That's dope, man. That's dope. I'm gonna go back to something you said earlier about, you know, with the whole Suge Knight thing. You know, we kind of talked about it, and I guess it kind of ties in with the whole LA, you know, the checking in and stuff like that, in a sense. But this story is kind of a little different. What happened with that situation?
Okay, so when we did the publishing deal for Pop Lock and Drop It, that was probably right, I want to say in the midst of the Black Brown era, like 2006, somewhere around that time. So we flew up to California to do the publishing. So we flew Popo out, we flew his manager Dodie out to meet our publishers to execute the deal. So that next day we all went to the studio. They had booked us some time to just go in the studio and work, because when you do publishing deals, a lot of times the publishers will allow you to use their facilities, because if you don't make money or get placements, they don't make money. So they booked us a studio session that night. So we go to the studio, just like any other night, just having drinks, having fun, congratulating each other on the deal. Zoe knew a couple of females that he called to the studio. So just like any other day, we didn't think nothing of it. We've had sessions all the time with girls running around drinking. That's just what it was. But that day was different, you know what I'm saying? So these girls come in the studio, I didn't think nothing of it. Dodie didn't think nothing of it. Popo didn't think nothing of it. So come to find out, you know, two of the women that were there, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I'm going to say this correctly, I believe that one of them was Suge Knight's girlfriend and his daughter or something like that was there. We had no clue, and we wasn't disrespecting Suge. It was kind of more like barbershop talk. If I'm talking about LeBron, whack, I like AD, I don't like this person, or if I think Jay-Z is better than Nas, it was that type of talk. Like, you know, we was just talking about Death Row for some reason. So Dodie started talking about Suge, so we started feeding off his energy, like, you know, and I guess whatever he said, I don't remember exactly what he said, but whatever he said, they took it personal as we was disrespecting Suge. And now that I look back on it, it's almost like they may have felt like we knew who they were, but honestly, we didn't know who they were. So they was like, how they gonna disrespect my man? That's my father right in front of us. So they took it as some type of disrespect. And of course, we wouldn't have probably said what we said even if we weren't disrespecting them, but we knew they were there.
Gotcha.
So make a long story short, they end up leaving the studio. And that day, man, I had this energy over me where I was like, bro, let's go. Like, let's go hit a club and let's do something, because usually our pattern was we'd just stay in the studio and drink and work all night and drink. But that day, something was telling me, like, let's go, bro. Like, so we packed it up, everybody left, and we ended up going out. And then that next day, we flew back to St. Louis. So I'm landing in the crib, and I get a call from we go to Rolling 60. So Tylo called me. It was like, y'all can't come back to LA. So I'm like, man, this a joke, bro. What the hell are you talking about? He was like, y'all banned from LA. I was like, huh? And at this time, I'm starting to get nervous because he don't sound like he playing. So I'm like, what happened? And he was like, well, y'all had them girls that came to the studio that was Suge Knight people. And they felt that, you know, y'all disrespected Suge in front of them. And I'm like, what people? And he was like, y'all had some girls come to the studio, right? And I'm like, yeah. He was like, well, one of them was his daughter and one of them was his girl or something. I'm like, damn, we didn't know that. And they said, feel disrespected. He said, y'all can't come out to LA. So I'm still thinking it's a joke. I'm like, bro, come on, man. I'm waiting for him to laugh or be like, we got you, you good. He stayed. He was like, Sham, I'm not playing with you, bro. Like, we gotta figure this out, because until we figure it out, y'all can't come back out here. So make a long story short on that, they end up getting Big U involved. Anybody know who Big U is? He's the man out of California with all, you know, the rival gangs and stuff like that. So Big U ended up getting on the phone, and then we end up having the 60s on the phone, going back to the checking in. They actually was in the middle of working it out to get us in contact with Big U. and a couple of other cats that Suge Knight was affiliated with. So we were all able to get on the phone, squash it, and then I think Suge understood at that point that we wasn't disrespecting him. You know what I'm saying? He was like, I see y'all just having death row talk. I'm like, yeah, man, it ain't like we was in there, Suge Knight, or we'll beat somebody up, or we'll ride on Suge, and we'll hurt somebody. Like, it wasn't that. But whatever he said and however we said it, they took it that way. So once we squashed all the beef, everything good, one of the Rolling 60s called me back and they was like, cuz, right when y'all left the studio, Suge and them was on their way there, and they surrounded the whole studio. So he was like, you better be glad whenever you felt to leave, because if y'all would have stayed, they came there looking for y'all. So that was serious, bro. Like, I was like, that actually changed me a little bit, because I'm like, damn, like, I didn't realize that impact. You know what I'm saying? Like, so that was a super turning point for us. We was like, man, we gotta be super safe, because like he said, that could have been the end of y'all that night.
Most definitely. Most definitely, man.
Yeah.
Now, on the flip side, fast forward a little bit to, well, it's kind of aligned with your life. I see you got the crystals and things on right now, and you kind of spoke about this, but you see people like Kevin Gates, just like other celebrities. I think even with SZA and stuff like that, kind of highlighting it as far as like the spirituality and stuff like that. What made you get into that? And when exactly did you start?
Well, I feel like it was always really a part of who I was. Like even Chingy will tell you, like,
Chingy also.
Yeah, same with him. Like, he'll tell you, like, when we were working on Jackpot, the album, when we were staying in U City in the apartment, me and Chingy would talk about the universe, life on other planets, other dimensions, all type of stuff. Even back then, it's just that I wasn't really that comfortable enough to be out with at that time, as far as how it is now. So it's always been a part of who I was. Like, I've always been this person that felt this way, but it wasn't until like 2008 and 2009 till I went through like a full transformation of, a spiritual awakening to start going in a different direction, as far as knowledge, consciousness, and all of these particular things. So once again, it was something that Chingy felt. It was something I felt Zoe felt, because like Zoe's sister, Lisa, she was on a frequency spiritually. So it always been who I was, and I've always had a connection around it. But like I said, like, I didn't really come out like really sharing it on Facebook and like really exposing myself with it to around 2008, and that's when I started getting hit hard with going through my spiritual awakening. The shift, I call it. Like, things are shifting. You see Kevin Gates, you see Omarion, Mario. I can keep going. Chris Brown even sharing pictures of the chakras and certain things. So I think collectively as a whole, people are just starting to wake up. I even seen something with Youngboy the other day had something positive to say, like, things are reaching people, where people are shifting.
You have to stop the violence.
Stop the violence, where even what you're seeing with Kyrie and Kanye, you're seeing a shift. So I think a lot of us always felt it, but it just wasn't the time for us to like make a full transformation into who we are, to who you see right now. Type of thing. So like I said, we always been in it, but it just, people didn't get a chance to see it until we got a little exposure to put it out there.
It's definitely a shift, because myself personally, I have went through that shift where, people get to, distancing themselves from you. They think, oh, what the heck dude on? He crazy or something like that. Like, the type of weird stuff he on. But you waking up, and then in a sense, it's kind of a good thing in a sense. You're getting, I guess, bad energies away from whatever you want to call it. Like, people who don't align with your purpose in life. That's how I look at it.
No, exactly. And it's funny you said the crazy thing, because when I first started putting it out on Facebook and social media, it was at a time when nobody was really doing it. Like, it was kind of still fresh. Like, you didn't see it how you see it today. Mm-hmm. So that's when I kind of started, like, me and Zoe never really broke up at that time, but we just started parting ways a little bit, because I started going more down the spiritual path, and it started kind of to separate things a little bit. So I went on my path, Zoe went on this path. We all were still cool. We had never split up at that time. And I hadn't seen Chingy in a couple of years. And he reached out to me, and we went out to dinner. And me and him was sitting down having a conversation, and he was like, man, people saying you crazy out here, bro. I said, that's what they saying about me? He was like, yeah, people. He was like, I was thinking to pick you up, and you was talking to yourself. So I'm like, they acting like I'm walking around talking to myself, or I done went damn crazy or something. And Chingy was like, I obviously see there's nothing wrong with you. You just way more intelligent and on a higher frequency than you was at the time. So it's crazy to me how people will take intelligence out of a certain frequency you in, and then when you start changing, they'll think that you're crazy because you're not doing the same thing they doing. Because I kind of got offended a little bit. I'm like, well, so what people think, man? I'm just like Sham walking down Lucas and Hunt, talking to himself with his shirt off. Like, what people think? But Chingy was like, you know how it is. Like when you start leveling up on spirituality or changing, then people are going to associate that, oh, this nigga crazy because he not doing what you do. The same thing I see people saying about Kevin Gates now. Same thing I see people saying about a lot of these people. XXXTentacion. People didn't understand what he was on when he was talking about the hertz and the frequencies of music, on how the frequency affects the chakras.
That's a real thing.
That's a super real thing.
That's a real thing. Like that can disrupt your end of why I make sure I make it important that I don't, when I'm dropping my kids off at school, I turn the music off. There ain't gonna be no rap, I ain't have no disrespect to the local radio station, but I'm turning it down in the morning. I'm not ran to school when my kids ain't hearing that stuff before they go to school. I can just before they go to sleep, anything anything that depicts your day. You can't. First thing you listen to or before you go to sleep, but you I guess downloading in a sense before you go to sleep, it affects your next day or whatever. You gotta make sure. That's why I try to read something before I go to sleep.
Subconscious.
Yeah.
Listen to your subconscious.
Yeah, that stuff it definitely messes with your vibration, your frequency, whatever you want to call it, your aura. It changes your mood, all of that. Music is like one of the most powerful things in the world, like as far as like with the propagandas, with the videos, all that stuff. Yeah, I
remember I did an interview with it wasn't, I'll take that back, it wasn't an interview, it was a program I did called Dynasty Hip Hop with the Nation of Islam, and I would go around to these like different schools and things that they have for me teaching kids that came from the city that needed guidance. And one of the things that I would teach about was how even before people heard Kanye say it back then, I was teaching about how that the music, the frequency of it affect your chakras, and Kanye was actually right about that. To where that's why when a cat listens to like if you're doing a drive-by or something, you might be playing something with bass. You ain't finna do a drive-by listening to Taylor Swift or Katy Perry, because the hertz, and that's what XXXTentacion would talk about, is that the hertz are vibrating on different frequencies. And if you notice, a lot of the trap music is slow, the bass, you know what I'm saying, it's real melodic, and it's getting into your subconscious mind. And then you got pop music like, Katy Perry, last Friday night, in the club. Like, how you gonna be mad at somebody listening to that type of music? So you're absolutely right, where it affects your vibration and frequency down to your lower chakra, and that's what Kanye was saying. That 808, the energy of the music, and like even when we did Chingy, it was all up tempo right there. Holiday Inn, One Call Away, like everything was up, the frequency of the music. So that Hertz thing, and I got to give credit to XXXTentacion, rest in peace, man. Like he was onto something with that. Like he was really exposing that Hertz thing. He was, if you go back and look at his old videos, he was going hard in that. And that's a real thing that people know about, and it definitely is affecting us. Some people would disagree, but I'm one of them people that disagree, that it do affect us. Like somebody would be like, nah, because this one girl was telling me, she was like, I disagree with you, Sham, that's white supremacy, it's the product of your environment. And she tried to turn it into a race thing. But I was like, I disagree with you, because what about when the rock and roll era was in? I said, remember when the heavy metal era was in? And you had these rock bands that, you know what I'm saying, like Metallica and these like super hardcore rock people, that a lot of these kids were like Satan worshiping and cutting off, pig's head and doing all type of crazy stuff. And that you see, they caught on to that, and they made a conscious effort. Now this ain't got nothing to do with no black people. The white people that was running that made a conscious effort to push metal underground. What metal band do you really hear now? You got Green Day, and these ain't even metal bands, but you got like these more type of alternative type of rock bands. But where's the Metallica at? Ozzy Osbourne. Where's these like super underground, because they knew it was affecting them, and they pushed it and spent it to another narrative. So that's real.
And it goes back to like Lior. I just hip hop. I didn't even keep directing towards him, just hip hop. They don't push the J. Cole or the Kendrick Lamar and stuff like that. They they got their success, but you hear like the more of the Lil Durks, the King Vines, and et cetera, et cetera. That type of style of music, because like you said, it makes more money. People are drawn to it quicker, and It's crazy. It is. People like negative things.
Yeah,
the internet said people like it, but the negativity spreads quicker than the positive.
Yeah, it's the frequency. It's just like, I'll give you an example. Like, it ain't no doubt about it. You can research it, pull it up. Like, me and Zoe had a tax situation where we didn't do nothing wrong. We went through everything every celebrity go through, where we hired a tax accountant and they messed up our taxes and such. So the news picked it up, all the outlets picked it up, and I was getting called from everybody. Like, people were sharing it, everything. Like, but what they didn't share was when Hurricane Katrina happened, me and Zoe took like $40,000-$50,000 and took a lot of the people that didn't have places to stay in Hurricane Katrina. We took everybody shopping. Channel 2 was there. The news came out. Everybody was there. But I just seen one person share that. But when that Trak Starz tax case came out, that the Trak Starz are dealing with tax issues, everybody shares it. So you're right, like, people buy more into lower frequency things, so they see that working, so that's what the industries cater towards. Like, if you look in the early 80s and 90s, conscious music was being profited from. So they didn't trip off of it, you know what I'm saying? Like, so, and then they started shifting and changing the narrative, you know what I'm saying? So the conscious 80s and 90s movement shows you that you can make money off of it and that they control the mind. Because you had conscious records, like groups like Brand Nubians, they had big records that was #1. And if you go back and listen to them, they were conscious records. But you would think that was impossible when you listen to what's going on right now. Like, damn, how did they... It was the same type of people, like, so how did it switch from this to that type of thing? So,
man, like Chemo said, maybe somebody up top seen something they wanted to change it.
And Crazy Bone, who we just worked with.
Crazy, shout out to Crazy.
Yeah, shout out to Crazy Bone, who we just did a record with, and Lady Smoker. Shout out to Lady Smoker. Like, Crazy, you know, went on there and talked about that, how they had a secret meeting, and that was a conscious effort for them to change the frequency in the music. I think Too Short said the same thing.
I've seen that before.
Yeah, where they made a conscious decision to say, we finna shift the narrative of where this music is going. More negative, you know what I'm saying, type of thing. And Crazy, you could look it up, he got a whole interview where he because he was there at the meeting. You know what I'm saying, type of thing, so yeah.
Well, it's 2022, it's about to end, but you know, 2022, what do you got going on today? Like, since everything, like, what's going on with you now?
Well, right now, we've been kind of low-key, you know, I'm still in the industry, we still working, we still doing music, but we've been low-key kind of scoping certain, you know, different artists, and we just recently had a situation with this artist, J Money Star, who we partnered up with this company called Equity, who was a parent company to Jay-Z's Rock Nation. So we actually partner up with them to develop artists to get them to a certain place and run them through Rock Nation. So say, for example, like if we take an artist, we develop them and the song get big, they gave us permission to use their platform to say if this artist gets to a certain level, then we can run them through Rock Nation. So we kind of been low-key doing that and scouting, and then just through the years, like still working on a lot of movies. Because that's the thing in the music industry. People think because they don't hear you on the radio or you ain't doing a bunch of stuff, you're not working. But we got our hands in a lot of different things that we doing. Like even prior to that, we was doing a lot of music. Like when you look at our Wikipedia, I mean a lot of movies. When you look at the Wikipedia, you will see we was actively doing movies and still scoring and doing stuff like that. So we still got our hands in it, but because music is so different now, like we coming from a different direction of how we do it. So we still, like, it's the same thing, you know what I'm saying, but just kind of more under the radar.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. If you can leave, let's just say it just goes from, I'm gonna give you two different angles. From a music perspective, when it comes to an artist trying to, you know, come up, or a producer trying to come up in the industry, what advice can you give them?
One of my biggest things is creativity. I always strive on being creative. Some of the people that we mentor right now, like as a songwriter, I work with G Universe, and G Universe worked with City Spud. I met him through the Dynasty Hip Hop program I told you about. He's an up and coming songwriter, and those are the type of people we mentor. So basically, just like I would tell G and anybody, it's like creativity to me is the key. You know what I'm saying? Going back to what I said about King Von, like how it's the same feeling type of music, street, but it's different. So to me, the key is you have to be different and be creative. Nando STL, who I kind of been watching for a long time, I always knew that he would, you know, make it. He was different. He didn't care about people ridiculing him for being different, and his creativity to me is what got him to that next level, which I always knew at some point it would happen. You know what I'm saying? For to me, it's just being creative. You got to be different. You got to think you competing with hundreds of millions of artists every day, uploading and downloading. So what's going to make you stand out from 500 million people that's putting songs up every day? Like, how can we separate that? So all the biggest artists from Kanye West to everybody you see are super unique in their own way and different. So my biggest thing is creativity, and I'm gonna say this thing too, is know the music business. Know what you're getting yourself into, because a lot of the stuff that you see in Chingy going through and we went through is because we knew things, but we didn't know as much as we could have known. You know what I'm saying? Like lawsuits. Me and Zoe went through a bunch of lawsuits. Like, I'll tell a funny story real quick. We almost got sued. We had a lawsuit from the guy that made the Michael Myers music. You know, the dun 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 dun. He literally tried to sue us. You know what I'm saying? We did a record. We did a record with Ludacris called Sweet Revenge. And if you go back and listen to Sweet Revenge, the keys are played similar. But when we did the beat, we weren't thinking about Michael Myers. But he asked the actual original guy, heard that, and tried to sue us. But of course we won, because, you know what I'm saying, we knew at that time we knew the business a little bit and was able to navigate better with our attorneys and to get through that. Because if we didn't know the business, he could have got us, and it could have cost us a lot of money. But so that's my important thing, is to know the business. You know what I'm saying? Because that's 90% of how these artists are getting jammed up. You're not reading contracts. You don't know. You don't have attorneys. People are signing without lawyers, and you're so quick to get money and not thinking about the business aspect. It affected us. It affected everybody. You seen when Nelly, when he just did the interview with him and Ali, and was doing their thing, like how he described the whole D2 thing. Like, it's some things they knew, some things they didn't know, some things we knew, some things we didn't know. You know, so you have to be in control, because if you're not in control, you're gonna get got.
Well, definitely. From a life perspective, like just a young person, like you said, you coming up from the inner city of St. Louis, you know, moved out of the county, but still just coming up in the inner city of St. Louis, and you know, for a lot of people, especially as me as a young man, I didn't see myself being where I'm at today. And I'm sure there's a lot of young people who probably don't see past what they see right now that's in front of them. What advice can you give them?
Well, the blessing with social media, like we were saying before, is that it allows anybody to get a platform. So I tell people all the time, even if you broke, you struggling, you don't got no money, if you got a cell phone, you can change your life. If you know how to work Instagram, social media, TikTok, you can change your life. So I always tell people that one upload of a video, one anything you do to market your music can be the big change that you're looking for. You got to just creatively find a way to do something that can give you a voice. Like, you got people like Charleston White, that's not a rapper, he's not a singer, but he's turning into a celebrity. He's using his voice and his skills to know how to teach the youth, to translate it into him, you know what I'm saying, being damn near a celebrity. So I would tell people to just utilize the technology that you have around you to let people see what you're doing. And you can't be afraid. That's another thing too. A lot of people are scared to show themselves in that light. And I always tell artists, if you're marketing yourself, like, you have to show people what you're doing. We just in that time right now. People want to see what you're doing. People want to hear what you're doing. So I would say you always in the game. As long as you know somebody with a cell phone, which everybody knows somebody with a phone. If you got a camera on there and you can upload something, your life can be changed. You just got to figure out something creative and content-wise to do that. You know what I'm saying? Because we didn't have it at that time. We just had to go hard and grind, you know what I'm saying, and just use resources. We couldn't post something up. We had to go to people's house, put up flyers and
the footwork,
yeah, posters.
Where it just spreads everywhere.
Yeah, you go to TikTok, you got damn dogs doing autograph signings that's doing deals with Gucci and all type of stuff. So we live in a time now where anybody can become famous. You know what I'm saying? It's just up to you to want to do the work to market your music. You got to market it. That's the thing. Yeah.
Most definitely. Sham, appreciate the time, brother. Appreciate you coming down.
No doubt.
With me.
Yeah, appreciate it.
For those who like to keep in contact with you, let them know where they can find you at on social media.
Well, mainly, you know what I'm saying, for me, I'm just doing the TikTok thing, whatever. But you can go to my Instagram at Shamar Starchild. That's spelled SHAMAR STARCHILD. That's my Instagram. And if you want something, you could just DM me. And on Facebook, you could just look up Shamar Trak Starz Darty. That's my name. It'll pop right up. So, you know what I'm saying? If you want to holler at me, anything, just DM me. We always open to collab. Always open to work, you know what I'm saying, with whoever. So.
Yeah, appreciate your time, bro.